so this is Maya 2025. We're just going to look at some basic modelling concepts. So this here is your viewport where things are going to appear. We navigate it by holding the Alt key, left click and drag, middle mouse click and drag, right mouse click and drag, or just middle mouse click scroll will give you a zoom as well. So that's just moving around that space in the middle there. We have a poly modelling shelf, which is here. We have other shelves as well, but for today we're just looking at poly modelling. And we have a modelling menu set, which is here. Rigging looks like that, but modelling is where we are today. Okay, so here I would click on a polygon cube and it will appear in the middle there. The inputs for the poly modelling cube are here, so we can set its width, height and depth, and how many subdivisions from its width, height and depth there as well. So here I am in the viewport and I'm going to hit F. F is frame or focus, and it will just zoom in on that guy there. If we want to look at its top, hit the space bar, hover the cursor in the top view and hit the space bar again, hit F and it will frame it. If we're hovering in the viewport again, click out, we can also go to the front view and we can come to the side view as well, but we can work in the perspective view. So that's navigating some various views as well. So each cube or object is made up of, if I right click on the object, I can select a vertex, which are these points at the ends, and I can edit those. So I can go W, which is select and move. I can do that. If I select 2, so I can hold the shift key, select the second one, and if I do that I can scale them together or scale them apart, which is R. I can hit E, which is rotate, and I can rotate the pair around the center point. So I can edit the shape by using vertices, which are sub-objects. If I right click again, I can select edge, that's an edge, this is an edge, this and this is an edge if I hold the shift key, so I select multiples. If I hit W, I can move them. If I hit E, I can rotate them. And if I hit R, I can scale them in and out. Obviously, depending on how many you have selected and which ones you have selected, you'll get a different output. I can also go right click, go face. I can select the face again. Move the face around. Note that the gizmo will either lock in different world or object axes depending on where you go, or in the camera axis if I can select in the middle of the gizmo there. And it's the same for all the gizmos. So if I scale, it's scale in one direction, scale in all directions, scale in the other direction. Okay, object mode. If I go Control Z and undo that until we just have a cube again, we can go back to object mode. We can look at its inputs here, and in its inputs we can change height, width and depth. If I go from 1 to 1.5, you can see it gets 1.5 bigger, so that's its size. But I can also, I can change these things by going in these boxes here and typing in a value. I can type in values individually, so height of 2, height of 1, or I can select a couple of them or all of them, middle mouse click over here, drag left or right, and I can change those values there. Okay, so I can do that. So an interesting concept when we're looking for organic surfaces. Obviously straight lines, which are edges, vertexes are points, and flat polygons aren't going to give us, you know, funky organic surfaces. And to get funky organic surfaces, we hit 3 on the keyboard, which is that, which is subdivide or smooth. And so what it's doing is it's giving a smooth of 2 iterations to say that's what this looks like if we smooth through it. In 3D animation, 3D modeling, tend to work at low poly, because when you're editing, it doesn't put an awful lot of load on the computer, and it doesn't put an awful lot of load on the graphics card. But when we're rendering, we want it as smooth as possible, so we get those nice gooshy surfaces. And so editing something, animating it, modelling it, tend to do it at fairly low poly, and then rendering is done at high poly. Obviously that's slightly different when we're hitting things like ZBrush, when you do a high poly modeler, but at the end of the day what you're going to do is retopologize that down to a lower poly model for any functional editing later. And so you are always going to end up with a slightly lower polygonal mesh than you might have done at some stages of the working process. But what you need to do when we go from 1 to 3 and back again is learn how to control how the smoothing affects it. So at the moment it's an algorithm that puts an average between the points, and so to change how that averaging works, if we can add more points in. So if I go subdivision height there, and I middle mouse click and drag that up, so I get an extra couple of divisions in it there. No, I've not gone all the way back to the square cube, so that's not a great demo, but never mind. If I hit 3, we get that. So now it's staying in a straight line in the vertical bit, because that's where I put the extra edges in. And you can see that if I go subdivision depth and I put 2 more in there, then it becomes more boxy. If I go into width, again, as I put in more edges, it allows us to square it out a little bit. We don't have to put in loads more. You know, if I wanted something very sharp, I could put 10 in there. And then obviously that looks tidy, but we've got lots of extra information and data in there because we don't want to go high poly. So we could, in effect, do this. We could go back to here and put in 3, but when we edit it, made it funny shape there. We go edge. I can select edge singly like this, but if I double click, it will select the entire edge loop going all the way around the object. If I go 4, so mesh, you can see that going all the way around, but it's not easy to see the object as a whole. So we do that. If I hold the shift key, I can add to that selection, double click here, and I've got both of those edge loops. If I go to scale, I can scale those away from each other and do that. If I get that one, double click, shift, double click, scale these ones away. I can do that, double click there, shift, double click there, and scale these apart. Although my edits aren't helping it, and I go 3, and you can see actually, object mode when I click off, that the finish is quite similar to what it is with loads of polys in, because the edge loops are just where you need them to make them square. That's how you add the detail that you want, but don't add so many polys in by putting the edge loops in just the right place. Now I know I've just been working with Cube, but there are loads of basic objects. So if I go create here with standard objects, and so I can come in here and I can have cylinder, and again you have different settings. So instead of being a radius of 1, I can put radius 0.2, and it's a skinny cylinder. Change how many subdivisions in height there are on various bits and pieces like that. So that's kind of cool. And each object that I get is similar. It's got its own settings. So always like a torus, because it's like a Blender tutorial. Everybody wants a donut. Create. I always like helixes. They're kind of nice. Although I always thought the default setting for the helix isn't the best one in the world. Width 5 is better, and then height 3. And then rather than having subdivisions 50 that way, I go 12 that way, and then go subdivision axis 12 that way as well. And then we can do that, and then hit 3, and then it's nice and curly and smooth and everything, because we've subdivided that. The helix is a nice one. Okay. I think height bigger. There you go, something like that. Right, and so what I advise you to do is go through all the polygon primitives and see what's in there. You know, we've got some great ones there. We've got super ellipses, and we've got spherical harmonics, whatever. So there's all sorts of things, gears are there and everything, prisms and pipes. So yeah, go play with that, find out what basic objects are, play with their settings to see what they look like smoothed and unsmoothed, and just get a general feel for creating objects in Maya, and then come into the next one and look at joining objects together and what that looks like. So see you in the next.